I'm Hugh Hewitt. Welcome to the Salem News Channel, Salem Radio Network, our great affiliates from coast to coast, north to south, east to west. Thank you. If you're driving home or you're just staying home because you're snowed in, you've come to the right place for good news and information, breaking news as it happens. For example, the president called in to Sid and Friends, a radio show in New York City this morning, had this to say about Iran, cut number 2.
We have a big armada going over there right now, and hopefully we won't have to use it, but it's very powerful and bigger than what we have in Venezuela that we sent over. That worked out so well, and the leadership there is doing a very good job coordinating with us and everything else. But we have a big armada going over there, and we'll see. Hopefully we won't have to use it.
President says that. No, I don't think so. I think we're going to use it, but we'll see. Trey Yingst, Fox Intrepid reporter, along with Lucas Tomlinson, said this earlier, yesterday, 20 hours ago, cut number 3.
Tonight, in an interview, President Trump said Iran wants a deal, but the situation is in flux with the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group now in CENTCOM waters. We are tracking a number of developments. Another U.S. official said that the Iranians know the number of the United States to call if they want to negotiate. And, of course, we have heard new rhetoric and comments from Iranian officials, including the spokesperson for Iran's foreign ministry, who commented directly on the movement of this carrier strike group. So a lot of developments across the region as everyone waits to see what comes next. We will keep you posted on Fox News and, of course, here.
Coming up in hour 3, I'll continue my Focus on Iran series, which has to date included the President of the United States, Haviv Rettig-Gur, Michael Duran, Mark Dubovitz. Yesterday I had on Benham Ben Taleblu, and today Richard Goldberg from the Foundation of Defense of Democracy. And I'm going to finish it out with Kareem Sajipour from Carnegie sometime this week. Here's Kamal Afzali on CBS News last night, cut number 4.
How many people were killed during the crackdown on recent protests in Iran? Well, the most conservative numbers come from human rights organizations focusing on Iran. They compile tallies methodically, naming the dead individual by individual. Norway-based Iran Human Rights, for instance, has arrived at a figure of 3,428. They say they confirm each death using 2 independent sources or direct access to a very reliable source. But the group has underscored a caveat. They say that figure is much lower than their own assessment, based on the regime systematically underreporting deadly state violence.
Okay, cut number 5. Same reporter, same topic.
Weeks ago, a source inside Iran told CBS News that activists compiling a full death toll using reports from medical officials believe at least 12,000 people were killed, and as many as 20,000. Last Tuesday, that upper estimate of 20,000, and possibly higher still, was a figure cited by an independent UN expert based on reports they'd received from doctors inside Iran. Fast forward to Sunday, we now have even larger numbers, as reported by Time magazine. Time magazine says it has obtained a death count from 2 officials within Iran's Ministry of Health, that as many as 30,000 people could have been killed.
Okay, one more cut from Kamal, cut number 6.
Although these numbers and others I haven't mentioned all vary considerably, one thing's clear. They cast grave doubt over Iran's official death toll of 3,117. A reminder, the internet is still shut down across Iran, and so the extensive witness testimony and visual evidence of mass killing that's emerged likely represents only a fraction of the true scale of the bloodiest crackdown in modern Iran.
Not modern Iran. No, since 1941 in the Babi Yar massacre, because sources in Great Britain today, 40,000 dead at the hands of the Ayatollahs and the IRGC. Jillian Turner over at Fox had additional reporting about the Trump return to deterrence policy, cut number 7.
So, Sandra, Trump administration officials are now considering potential options to push for regime change inside Cuba, much like they did in Venezuela. That includes the option to impose a naval blockade to completely choke off oil imports to the country. A State Department spokesperson here tells us, quote, Cuba is a failing nation. It is in our national security interests for Cuba, which is 90 miles away from our shores, to be competently run by a democratic government and to refuse to host our adversaries' military and intelligence services. Now, there is no naval blockade in place right now, but that's not stopping Beijing from chiming in to defend their communist comrades. They say, quote, China calls for the immediate lifting of the blockade and sanctions on Cuba. We will continue to support and assist Cuba. The Trump administration is very closely monitoring right now the Cuban economy, which is in free fall.
Free fall is a generous term. There is no Cuban economy, period. Now I want to switch over to the fact that Democrats are threatening to shut down the government because they don't like ICE. Really, they are. It's quite extraordinary. And Brit Hume, dean of all correspondents and commentators in Washington, D.C., was on with Fox News with Brett Baier yesterday, and Brit Hume said this, cut number 8, about a shutdown.
I tell you who I think agrees with that, and that's the congressional Democrats, Senate Democrats in particular, who think that they might even, be willing to do another government shutdown, poorly though they did in the last one, to keep up the fight on this whole issue of DHS and its excesses, or its alleged excesses anyway. So I think that's kind of where we are. It's all, to some extent, a subset of the never-ending struggle against Donald Trump. But I think that the extravagant statements by these DHS officials, ICE officials, and the DHS secretary over the weekend didn't play well. And such polling as there is, Brett, suggests that people think ICE and DHS have gone too far, and they're not winning the PR war in Minnesota.
Well, it seems like President Trump acknowledges that to some extent as well, sending Tom Holman in, having these conversations with the Minnesota governor and Minneapolis mayor as well.
Oh, yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. He's taken quite a different posture from DHS officials and from Kristi Noem in particular.
That cut went south on us. That was a technical difficulty unplanned for. Too bad. Britt, he went on to say, it's really dumb to shut down the government. All right, so where are we at the end of all this? We are waiting. I've got lots of stuff on Minnesota, which I will be discussing with you as the show proceeds. I'm going to be talking with Michael Duncan after the break about that and the politics of 2006. Michael, one of the fellows over at, boy, he's going to be a little bit insufferable. He's from Indiana. He's just going to be insufferable. Yeah. So do we have Indiana Wants Me for Duncan when he comes back? We're going to have to play. One of the fellows is from Indiana, and we're going to hear about the Hoosiers this and Hoosiers that. Now Hoosiers is the greatest movie ever made. Drucker's coming up a little bit later. He's got the politics of ICE. Brett Baier is back. James Lilacs is here. Byron York. And then in hour 3, I'm returning to the biggest topic of all, which is Iran. I do want to call your attention, though. I wrote a column, a long column for Fox News this morning. Its title is Morning Glory. Canada is a small power biting the hand that protects it. How unfortunate for our friends up north to be led by a banker who thinks he can reorder the world. And I just go through the numbers. Canada's got 42. Now, listen, my daughter-in-law is Canadian-American, born up there, naturalized American, love her. Love her parents, love her siblings, love her relations. I mean, I don't understand the politics set up there, but, that they might be for Trudeau. It doesn't bother me. I've got liberals in my family in America. But their prime minister has always been a clown, Justin Trudeau, and we didn't take him seriously. Carney went over to Davos after he went to China and shook hands with Xi and said we have an alliance with China, putting aside the genocide of the Uyghurs, the imprisonment of Jimmy Lai, the threatening of Taiwan, the repression of Hong Kong. Mark Carney goes over there and says there are hegemons in the world, just 2. He didn't say 2, but he said we're the middle powers must band together against the hegemons. Canada has 42 million people. Their GDP is $2.4 trillion because of us. They don't spend 2% on their GDP. They haven't spent 2% on their GDP since 1989 to 1990 in 2 consecutive years. Now, they were good allies for a long time. World War II, Juno Beach. 516 Canadians died during the Korean War. We had 158 Canadians make the ultimate sacrifice in Afghanistan after 9/11. They went to war with us for 14 years. Their prime ministers used to stand side by side with us on everything, but now they're a shadow of a middle power. They're not a middle power. They're a tiny power. They're not even Poland and Finland. And I put into this column all of the stats on what real middle powers and real small powers do. They don't have nukes. They got 4 old submarines that were built in 2003. One of them was refurbished in 2015 after a fire. They're diesel or electric, they're electric submarines, and they've got a total of 500 aircraft in their Air Force, which are integrated into our 5,000 plane and aircraft Air Force. They got 68,000 people in their military. We got 1 million too. Let's just be serious. They depend upon the freedom of the seas that we provide and protect. And Mark Carney is going to backpedal and backpedal and backpedal, but Donald Trump is not going to take anything short of an apology for comparing us to the killers and the Chi-Coms who he wants to pal around with. What a banker. What just the worst snidely whiplash, and that's a Canadian reference for those of you the appropriate age. What a snidely whiplash of a prime minister. Joined by Michael Duncan, one of the fellas on the Ruthless podcast, himself a Hoosier, and congratulations, Michael. I'm sure you are a proud Hoosier with the national crown being taken from Ohio across the state line. Congratulations to you, friend.
Thank you very much. I mean, I think bigger than Indiana is just a great story for college football. You know, doubted the whole way, losing his program in the history of college football, and somehow national champion. So anybody out there listening, if you think your team doesn't have a shot, you know, they might.
Well, that's a nice way to spin it. The other way to spin it is Mark Cuban unloaded the Dallas Mavericks and bought the Hoosiers. And
hold on here, Hugh. Hold on. Miami was paying Carson Beck, what, $4 million?
I'm not saying there aren't. I'm not saying there aren't other people out there spending billions on their college team, but Mark Cuban is a good businessman. He buys low and he sells high, but just don't expect it to last.
Well, fine, Hugh. All I'm saying is the reason why they were so doubted were all these transfers that Curt Cignetti brought from JMU, and everybody said, oh, well, these kids can't compete in the Big Ten. They go ahead and they win the Big Ten. And then people said, well, they'll never be able to match up against the powerhouse of the SEC. And then they throttled Alabama, and then they win the national championship. And so all these kids, those kids who were doubted, the zero-star kids, are now national champions. You know, so I think it is a good
kids who were
story.
like 28. Some of them were on Medicare, I think. But look, I don't mind. I don't mind. They're Big Ten. And by the way, isn't the SEC so mid? That's what Doug Lee Marie's our football expert calls. It's just mid. They're just not really a conference anymore that anyone wants to be in. It's all in the Big Ten now.
Yeah, that's right. And finally, you know, I know you're an Ohio guy, so I'm glad we have some solidarity here in the Big Ten.
We do. Ohio basically allowed Indiana to leave and declare. It's sort of like when there's a subdivision in a neighborhood and we let them go over and take all the flat land. By the way, if you have to give a list of 5 tourist attractions in Indiana, rattle them off for me, will you?
Okay, so first of all, obviously, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Indy 500.
Well, that's one day a year.
Yeah, but you know it's the largest single-day sporting event in the world, Hugh.
But that's not a tourist attraction. That's a sporting event. That's different. I mean, do we go and see the Indiana Coliseum as well when it's empty?
Hugh, it is not a sporting attraction. It's a religious event. Being on that track. Okay.
Okay, we'll give you a half. What's next? I mean, where do we go?
Well, we're going to go to St. Elmo's Steakhouse, and we are going to get the shrimp cocktail with the super spicy horseradish cocktail sauce. Really opens up the sinuses.
We went from a one-day event to a steakhouse for the Indiana attractions. Don't they have a theme park?
Okay, well, we don't need theme parks because what we have is coliseums of sport. Next, we're going to go ahead to Lucas Oil. And we're going to go watch the Indianapolis Colts, a wonderful football franchise with a storied history.
And by the way, Phillip Rivers is going to transfer to IU and lower the age of the IU people over there. Let's get to important stuff. Let's get to your podcast this morning. You guys ran the Senate map. You ran the map, and I'm glad you did. My assessment generally concurs with yours, but I am not complacent about Ohio. I have John Huston on the show almost weekly because I'm a Buckeye. And Sherrod Brown basically is a vampire, right? He lives in the dark off of government jobs. He went from Yale right to the state legislature and spent 50 years in the government. And he's not dead yet. We didn't use the garlic. We didn't get a mirror. What do you think?
Well, that is the grand irony, Hugh. You alluded to it. This guy's never had a real job in his life. But in every campaign ad or campaign stop, you see him without a blazer and his sleeves rolled up. And suddenly people in Ohio seem to think this is a working class man. And of course, he's not. And he's, far to the left. He's the Bernie Sanders of Ohio. But he's hoodwinked the people of Ohio before. And so we do definitely have to watch that race.
There is no media in Ohio. This is the sad fact that the Inquirer is down to nothing. The Plain Dealer is down to its sports section. They're all left-leaning. There's just no media on that. And I don't know. I'm a little bit worried. We'll keep bringing Houston on. Now the key question of the day, Michael. The Trump administration has a problem in Minnesota. It's a perception problem. The polling is on both sides. People don't want criminal illegal aliens who are violent in the country, and they don't like what ICE is doing. Does President Trump retreat from Minnesota, or does he double down?
I really hope he doubles down. I think retreating would send the wrong message, and it's the lesson that the left learned after 2020 is just if they riot and obstruct enough that we'll give in. And unfortunately, Joe Biden let in 20 million people into this country illegally. And so it's going to be difficult to undo all of that. And they're hoping that we get discouraged from doing it. I don't say that to disregard the political optics of this entire thing. It's going to be difficult because the left is insistent on making it as painful as possible for us. And this tragedy is terrible, right? That somebody was shot and killed during this skirmish with ICE agents. But I mean, what is the administration doing to put forward exactly what the ICE agents were doing at the time? Who are the criminals they were arresting? I mean, the perception, I think, is that we have this sort of vacuum, I think, on the right of not explaining enough about what ICE is doing and the terrible criminals that they're getting off the streets of Minneapolis.
Let me play for you the president on the White House lawn this morning getting a question about Homeland Security Secretary Noem, cut number 10.
I have, yeah. I think she's doing a very good job. The border is totally secure. You know, you forget. We had a border that I inherited where millions of people were coming through. Now we have a border where...
That's just all. The key part is she's doing a very good job. Do you agree, and do you think he will stay there? Because the president's been known to change his mind rather rapidly.
I think she is doing a great job, and it's easy to look past all the success this administration has had on the issue of border security. I also noticed that the president's bringing in Tom Homan. And I think bringing in Tom Homan, I think, is a good sign that we're getting somebody with a lot of experience to be in there on the ground to make sure the operations are effective. Reminder, Hugh, it was Tom Homan who was given an award by Barack Obama when he deported 1 million people. Right.
Yeah,
and so this used
reminder.
to be a bipartisan issue that we got criminal illegal aliens off of our streets. But the left lost their mind during the age of Donald Trump, and hopefully we can reverse some of that.
Now, last question. The president's a great communicator, best interview in America. I hope he does a ride along with the fellows on Ruthless Podcast before much longer. But not everyone in the White House is a great communicator. Do you think he tends to overlook the deficiencies of his friends?
Wow, that's a really good question, Hugh. It's possible. It's possible. It's difficult when you're dealing with these complicated issues, and you have to be out there every single day fighting a media who's against you, a radical left that's well-funded and against you. And so, yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's a communications issue at some level, that we have to be out there proactively telling the story of what this administration is doing to get criminal illegal aliens off the streets. Who are these people? These are people who have trafficked human beings. These are people who are selling drugs. These are pedophiles. I mean, these are people who've done domestic assaults. And instead, we're doing the Zapruder film on this interaction with the ICE officers and this horrible tragedy. And so it feels like, you know, the left has already won the debate by us engaging with it that way. People who are obstructing justice, people who are obstructing law enforcement from doing their lawful duty to get criminals off the street shouldn't be anywhere near those cops.
Everybody go listen to the Ruthless Podcast this morning. They run down the map in 2026, and you'll want to hear not only Michael, but, of course, Josh Holmes and Smug and our good friend Ashbrook from Cincinnati, which is kind of in Ohio. I was on America Reports earlier today with John Roberts about the trial getting underway today in Los Angeles. Let's listen to that cut number 1.
Bring in Fox News contributor Hugh Hewitt, also host of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Hugh, it's always great to have you on the program. Do you have any doubt that social media and its content are addictive? Is big tech the new big tobacco?
Well, two different questions, John, and good afternoon to you. I have no doubt that it is addictive, but I don't think it's tobacco, because tobacco went through about decades of litigation before they could prove that they were owed damages. The states and the plaintiffs were owed damages by the cigarette companies. It required a lot of discovery. Everyone who's ever been even a week in law school knows that torts, injuries, require a duty on the part of the person being sued, a breach of that duty, an injury that can be proven up, actual causation, proximate causation, and damages. It's a very long road to go. What's interesting about this case in California, it's in the LA Superior Court, is discovery. Are they going to find smoking gun memos? And after 6 years ago, the Social Dilemma documentary came out. Lots of people watched it. They got concerned. 2 years ago, Jonathan Haidt book came out, The Anxious Generation. Parents got aware and concerned. But it's a long way from there. We know it's addictive. We know it's bad for kids, to saying that this individual was injured badly and they intended it.
Right. I want to flash back to April 14th, 1994, a Senate hearing. Listen to Ron Wyden questioning the CEOs of big tobacco companies. Listen here.
Yes or no? Do you believe nicotine is not addictive?
I believe nicotine is not addictive.
Cigarettes and nicotine clearly do not meet the classic definitions of addiction.
I don't believe that nicotine or our products are addictive.
I believe nicotine is not addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
And I too believe that nicotine is not addictive.
All right, well, we now know that nicotine is one of the most addictive substances on the planet, and we do know that social media activates the same dopamine reward pathways as nicotine. So do these big tech social media giants really have a leg to stand on when they say, look, we've taken all of these steps to make sure that young people are protected, yet at the same time they've got their faces buried in Facebook and TikTok and YouTube and Snapchat for hours and hours every day?
I think they do have a leg to stand on, because in the cigarette litigation, the nicotine led to smoking, smoking led to lung cancer. That was the injury. Here they've got to prove that this plaintiff's addiction, which I don't doubt they'll be able to prove her addiction, was caused, proximate and actual, by the social media platforms that she was using. That's a big jump. There's a lot of people in the country that are depressed for a lot of reasons. There are a lot of people who hurt themselves in the country for a lot of reasons. It's pretty easy to blame social media. The states want a big payday, just like the cigarette companies made a big payday to the states, and that money's all gone. But it's such a large leap to go from an actual addiction to the injury that's claimed, because there are a lot of other proximate causes. There's a very famous case, I'm not going to go into it, called Paul's graph. Everyone just had a nervous shake from their law school days because they had to remember the fact pattern in Paul's graph. Lots of things cause lots of injuries. It's a very high bar to get over, John, a very high bar.
All right, well, the plaintiff's attorney, Josh Autry, says that these companies knew what they were doing. Here's what he said in a statement. When you look at the highest level executives, they were directing these decisions to choose business growth over safety features, to choose growing the amount of time that's being consumed by children and teenagers, as opposed to putting reasonable limits on that time. He's saying that the strategy was to draw children deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole.
Well, here's a plaintiff's lawyer who stands to win between 30 and 50% of any final judgment. So he's not going to say what they did was harmless. He's going to say that it hurt my client. That's what plaintiff's lawyers do. And God bless them, people who are actually injured need plaintiff's lawyers to bring those cases. It's just a case of first impression. We have not had it proven anywhere yet. And because you got a documentary, again, the Social Dilemma, and you got a great book, The Anxious Generation, which I recommend to everyone. We just have to wait and see if the jury will buy it.
Yeah, that book was suggested to my wife and I. We read it, and it terrified us. So, good recommendation from you. Any parent out there worried about your child on social media, that's a great read. You, as always, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
I'm glad to have a chance to talk about Jonathan Haidt and about the Social Dilemma, but I taught torts once long ago. It's not my favorite thing to teach. I just proximate cause is such a high burden to get over, that the depressed person was depressed because of the things that she was. And I mean, it's a lot of if. And there is a bridge too far, and the Paul's graph facts, that's where never mind. You don't want to know about the Paul's graph facts. But it just is, you got to prove a lot to prove that case. Time for David Drucker. He is, of course, senior political correspondent at the Dispatch. He got a brand new article out on the Texas Senate race, John Cornyn's dilemma. And David, first, let's have you recite the facts before I ask you my questions about it, because I got a lot of questions. I'm a Cornyn backer. I'm a Cornyn endorser. I love John Cornyn. But you wrote objectively, you always do, about the race. Tell people about it.
Well, you know, what makes Texas interesting in 2026 is not because I think the Democrats can flip it, although you never rule anything out, but it's highly unlikely. But what is happening is this Republican primary for Senate, where John Cornyn's being challenged by both Ken Paxton, the state attorney general, and Wesley Hunt, a congressman from Houston. And, you know, Cornyn has always won easily. I mean, he works really hard. He doesn't take anything for granted, but he's just never really faced a challenge, either at the general election or primary levels. And as the party has changed, you know, his political standing has just gotten a lot dicier because he's not the sort of combative populist who spends a lot of time on cable news or social media, although he does tweet a lot and he authors his own posts on X. And so he's not stylistically where a lot of Republican primary voters are now. And he's in a real dogfight for his career. Paxton has led in most polls. It's been narrow lately, but he's still up narrowly. And what we think is going to happen is that it's going to be a Ken Paxton, John Cornyn runoff, because Texas has that rule where if you don't get 50% plus one, you head to a runoff. So there's a March 3rd primary. It's coming up. There's a May 26th runoff. Just about everybody I talk to, and Congressman Hunt will make the runoff. And these are lower turnout affairs. They're lower turnout than the actual primary. Now, some people tell me that because there are going to be quite a few runoffs sprinkled throughout the state for various offices, that maybe this runoff won't be as low turnout as normal. But I think the bottom line here is, and what Cornyn told me when I sat down with him in El Paso last week, is that his race is going to be a real test for whether, and these were his words, whether a normal Texas conservative Republican can win a primary. And I think he's right. I think it's going to say a lot about where the party is, particularly because Paxton has so many scandals swirling around him that are, you know, we say allegations, but I mean, these things are pretty well known and pretty documented, that it would really say quite a lot if Paxton was able to beat him.
Now, I've said on the show many times, it won't surprise my listeners, and we're on right now in every major market in Texas, right now. John Cornyn is a layup reelection because you can't be more conservative on a voting record than John Cornyn. You can't support Trump any more than John Cornyn has supported President Trump. There is no room to his right. There is only the identity is combative politics, but in the Senate, where everything is based on seniority, you don't trade in someone at the top of the food chain for someone who will be at the bottom of the food chain and will never get off of the bottom because of his age. So I don't think Congressman Hunt's going to win. I do think it will be a runoff, and I do think John Cornyn will win easily because I think Texas voters are smart. And I don't know how much money Ken Paxton has raised. I got nothing against Ken. I know all the baggage that you referred to in your article. I know it in detail. I'm not going to trade in it. I just think it's absurd to spend the money for the Republicans there, that John Thune's got to spend money of the Senate Majority PAC defending his buddy, John Cornyn, because that's what senators do. And it's going to be John Cornyn eventually, and we're going to have wasted all this money. How much do you think Cornyn's going to have to spend in these two races, the March 3rd primary and then the runoff?
Right. So the pro-Cornyn forces have already spent anywhere from $50 to $70 million, depending on what kind of accounting you're doing. And I think he's going to have to spend another good, $25 to $50 million to really make his case against Paxton. Because the thing is, a lot of voters don't know about the allegations, and this is the only way they're going to beat him, right? Because the points you're making about seniority and the fact that his record actually does match well with President Trump. He has not voted against Trump. The knock on Cornyn from voters I talked to in Texas is that, well, when there's been a Democrat, in fact, I had one voter who's in the story, Michael Sheridan is his name, and he said, his voting record with President Trump is quite good, actually. The problem is when we had Joe Biden or Barack Obama in office, he got soft. And of course, Cornyn's a legislator who occasionally will take tough votes, but is trying to do, from his perspective, whatever he can, wherever he can. And when Democrats control one branch of government or all branches of government, that just means that unless you're just going to be a blanket no and never be involved, your record is not going to look as good as when Republicans are in full control of the government. And that's something, however, that a lot of voters, it's not that they can't understand it, Hugh, because voters are smart, but
do they
it's that they
understand
just
that Paxton could lose? That's the key. Paxton could lose because he's got so much baggage. That will turn, voters should just want to avoid the ads that are coming their way against Ken Paxton in November. But if it's Ken Paxton as the nominee, Act Blue will raise, I don't know how many millions of dollars, but they'll spend them all in the major media markets just hammering Ken Paxton for the next 6 months, won't they?
Yeah, so that's the other piece of this, is even in a rough midterm cycle, Texas should be fine. But if you have a highly flawed nominee, what Republicans that support Cornyn are saying, and I think there's some truth to this, is that if you end up with not just a rough midterm election, but a rougher than normal midterm election, which is possible at this point, then Texas becomes a little bit less red. And in this case, all of a sudden, Paxton is not a lock. And on top of it, to make sure he doesn't lose, Republicans are going to have to pour tens of millions of dollars into that race that they could otherwise spend elsewhere. And from the Democratic Party's perspective, I mean, they also should be more strategic, I think, about how they spend their money. But if Paxton's the nominee, then you can't blame them for going after him and seeing if they can pull off a miracle.
No, that is the proverbial late developing race that we all know will develop into a neck and neck race, and pollsters will have whoever, Jasmine Crockett or the other guy, the Presbyterian pastor,
James Talarico, correct?
Yeah, they'll have them ahead in every poll because that's what's going to happen, and then more money will pour into Texas, and they'll watch even more negative ads about Ken Paxton, all because of ambition as opposed to service to the country. I really don't understand Ken Paxton or Wesley Hunt here because John Cornyn is as conservative. It's a good piece, very good piece by David Drucker in the Dispatch, which you ought to be reading. It's a fine, fine journal of politics and opinion out of D.C., thedispatch.com. Thank you, Drucker. Follow him online at David M. Drucker over at X. Consumer Cellular is a great sponsor of the Hugh Hewitt Show because when you believe in your sponsor, I have two phones. I'm one of the few people in America that have two lines. One is for family. That's my Consumer Cellular line. Only they have it. And one is for my journo buddies, as Duncan and Smug like to refer to Ashbrook on Comfortably Smug's regular takedown of Ashbrook on the Ruthless podcast. My Consumer Cellular phone is wonderful. You get the same quality service of any cellular provider, but you have a lot of savings on it. ConsumerCellular.com/Hugh, or you can call 1-800-411-4454. When you call to investigate, that's all I ask that you do. Investigate whether or not they will save you a lot of money, because I think they will. I know they will if you're 50 years and older and you have an unlimited data plan. If you're 50 years and older, you can get 2 lines of unlimited data, 2 lines. Save the same numbers, same data, transfer everything over. It takes about 20 minutes. $60 a month. You'll get your second month free, by the way, for that plan or any plan with Consumer Cellular if you use my name, Hugh. That's my code. Pretty tricky, isn't it? HUGH. ConsumerCellular.com/Hugh or 1-800-411-4454. Don't get taken to the cleaners every single month by Big Cellular. They use the same cell phone towers as Big Cellular does. All right, that's the dirty little secret Big Cellular doesn't want you to know. Get off of it. Go away from them. Run away and head over to ConsumerCellular.com/Hugh or call 1-800-411-4454. Takes about 20 minutes to switch. Don't forget my code is Hugh and you'll get your second month free. Time for my Relief Factor. I'm in the Relief Factor Studio West. I'm so glad I'm not in the Relief Factor Studio North. I don't know if the lock would open. It's in such an obscure, small place that, it's one of those places about the size of the Unabomber shack and just it's cold right now. But I'm also glad I'm not in the Beltway studio. Thank you, Relief Factor, for having a Studio West for me to hide in for a few weeks during the Beltway's awful months. I got my Carrion Curcumin as Veritron Omega right here, and every day I take it. Now, I didn't go up the Implacable Hill this morning because my friend Sweet was with me, and I took him to the airport this morning. He'd been our guest. We went down to the Beachcomber in Orange County last night, the absolute best place to have dinner in Southern California. Some people will argue that. They'll tell you there's a place in L.A., Duke's. They'll tell you to go down to San Diego and get off and eat at one of the 3, I think in Carlsbad Exit or maybe Del Mar. No, Beachcomber. Absolutely the best place to go. And so we were out last night with Sweet, and Bud the contractor, and Steve the retired lawyer. We had a wonderful time. And so not only did I eat too much last night, I did walk on sand for about 10 yards, so that might count. I didn't do anything this morning because I took Sweet to the airport. But Relief Factor will be there for me tomorrow, 1-800-4 and the word relief. Cost $19.95 for a 3-week starter pack. That's their starter pack, $19.95, less than $1 a day. 1-800-4 and the word relief, or go to their website at relieffactor.com. Whether you're exercising or aging, and you're definitely doing the latter, you should be doing the former. The answer is relieffactor.com to get rid of those minor aches and pains. Coming up next hour, Richard Goldberg from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy. I continue to devote 1 hour of the program each day to setting up the Iran strike that I think is coming. I have Brett Baird joining me now. He, of course, the anchor of Special Report, America's newsman, America's anchor. Brett, I want to talk to you about Minnesota, because you have a very good perspective on this. You talked to all the different people. I think a week ago, Thursday, I said on the panel on Special Report, Minnesota is a shall issue state when it comes to permits, and they shall issue an open carry or a concealed carry, and that it was dangerous. That was after Renee Good and before Alex Pretty were shot and killed. I don't think it's going to get better either. I don't think the left is going home, and I don't think Donald Trump's going to back off. What do you think?
No, I agree with you, Hugh. I think the president's call. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
The president's call to the governor and also to the mayor of Minneapolis. I think that those two things, at least the tone from both sides about those calls, seem to indicate something different. I agree with you that, the agitators, the protesters who are hired to do that are probably not going to leave. But with the add of, state police, and maybe even National Guard, because Minnesota's, engaging and working with them, I think it could change the dynamic. I mean, just having areas for protesters that are outside the operation lines of ICE agents is one thing. And the other thing is to work and give up the illegal immigrants who are already jailed for crimes.
This is, if you've touched on, I think, the most important argument that Team Trump hasn't made effectively, which is that when illegal aliens are arrested, they are in a county or a city jail for a period of time until they reach trial, and they get a detainer, a term of art, meaning that ICE wants them whenever they're released on bond, on bail, on their own recognizance, or after acquittal. And St. Paul and Minneapolis won't do that. Has Jacob Fry said he'll order police to begin cooperating?
I don't know if he said that per se. I know that the president's asking for that, and I know that they had a good phone call. So listen, if you poll getting criminal illegal immigrants who have committed crimes off the streets, it's an 80-20, 70-30 issue. If you poll the type of stuff you're seeing on TV with ICE agents, and you add in, anecdotally that people have been, put into the middle of that who have not been criminal or illegal immigrants, then it goes exactly the opposite way. And I think they lost the PR narrative, obviously, in these incidents. And I think it's going to change. But you're right; it could be ugly before it's better.
Now, their spokespeople are, I think, in order of frequency of appearance, DHS Secretary Noem, Trish McLaughlin, the Assistant Secretary at DHS, Tom Homan, a little bit of Kash Patel, and every now and then Stephen Miller erupts on CNN. I think he goes on. Has Stephen Miller done your show, Brett?
He has. It's been a number of weeks, yeah.
Yeah, but he usually goes on CNN because he likes to erupt with Jake and usually wins that. Do you think those five are the best five communicators at the disposal of the administration on this?
Well, some of them are not, clearly, and they've had missteps. And I think the reason President Trump chose Holman to go into Minneapolis and to report directly to him tells you something. There's a dynamic in there, and Bill Malugin has reported on it. There's senior DHS officials who believe the narrative was too firm and too definite about Preddy and his motivations, as that shooting in the early hours. And there was a lot of bad feelings about it. And I think the president got that and sent Holman in on the ground.
And he's also a New Yorker who's followed for years Rudy Giuliani defending cops, and he wants to defend cops and law enforcement. But he probably also remembers, I started my TV career 2 months before the LA riots, the Rodney King tape. And you can always stand behind police, but you can't stand forever if there's something wrong with an incident. I have no judgment. I have no opinion one way or the other because I know that it will require weeks of special forensic analysis of what happened because officer-involved shootings are always complicated. But I have no opinion on it, and that's what I think cabinet secretaries ought to say. And they can say it while still saying, I support the men and women of DHS, Border Patrol, Immigration Control, and alcohol, tobacco, firearms in the Bureau. It's not really a difficult message, is it, Brett?
No, it's pretty simple. It's kind of down the middle, and you wait for an investigation and say they have a tough job. And it would be a lot easier if the state and local authorities would help ICE do their job. That's the message. And I think it also helps that Tom Holman was given an award by Barack Obama.
Yep.
And was touted for his work in the Obama administration.
Well, decades of law enforcement experience come into play here, and the last person that wants to be involved in a officer-involved shooting is the officer. Absolutely, 100%. The few that I have known well have always said that to me. Now, Brett, when it comes time to shut down the government or not shut down the government, there's going to have to be a choice made. The Democrats want to shut down the government again. I can't believe it. But I don't think Susan Collins is going to budge, and I don't think John Thune's going to budge on defunding DHS or in any way restricting ICE. Do you?
No. And, it's silly. The ICE has been funded through 2029, largely. I mean, it's around the edges that they're talking about additional funding, but they've been largely funded as an organization through 2029. So if you're taking away DHS funds, you're taking them away from TSA, from FEMA, in the wake of, tough travel, that could bite you. In the wake of snowstorms and other disasters, that could bite you. So politically, this is dangerous. I think that's why Chuck Schumer wants to have a meeting and a call with President Trump and try to come to some deal. And that's what I'm hearing is behind the scenes right now.
I almost feel bad for Chuck Schumer, which I've never said on the radio because he just cannot win the situation. You can't shut down DHS. Okay, let me turn to Iran. This is what President Trump said to Sid Rosenberg this morning. Brett, cut number 2.
We have a big armada going over there right now, and hopefully we won't have to use it, but it's very powerful, bigger than what we have in Venezuela that we sent over. That worked out so well, and the leadership there is doing a very good job coordinating with us and everything else. But we have a big armada going over there, and we'll see. Hopefully we won't have to use it.
Now, Brett Baer, I've had on every expert save one. Kareem Sajipour will be on, I think, Thursday. But Michael Duran, Mark Dubovitz, Ben Talablu, Richard Goldberg's coming up, Aviv Rettig-Gur. Of course, the president was on. All the experts want him to hit Iran hard and rattle their teeth, if not topple their regime, if it's possible. And the president is ambiguous. What do you think is going to happen? You've interviewed him more than anybody, I think, on the networks. What do you think he's doing here?
Yeah, I think he's positioning. He is doing the art of the deal as he sees it. Having the strength and, the big stick, as Teddy Roosevelt would say, looking for them to do a deal. He says they want to, and they call all the time, but he also kind of drew a red line about killing protesters. Now there are human rights groups on the ground saying it could be 30,000 who died in that span where protesters were killed in Iran. So, listen, I'm with you. I think that there is more likely a strike than not. I think that the delay has been about getting Patriot batteries and missile defense for Israel that was low. I think that's starting to be in place. And once it is, I wouldn't be surprised that there is some action. If there is action, you got to have something on the ground. I think they're working on that. And number 2, think about it. Venezuela and Iran, what is the tangential benefit of that? It is a pinch on Russia and China.
Yeah. Brett, the last thing I want to bring to your attention, Tommy Vietor is an annoyance to me. He's one of the pod bros, and he's barking at me online right now. But something he said today, I think Donald Trump might note when he was barking at me. Donald Trump told Iranian protesters he would rescue them. He encouraged them to take over institutions and then did nothing as they were massacred by the regime. That's early to be calling, you're repeating the red line erasure, and it's ironic, if not completely ridiculous, for an Obama bro to do it. But will the president have to live with that if he doesn't do anything?
Yeah, I think that the way he talked, I think that was pretty bold, and I think that that's why it leads me to the conclusion that I'm with you. I think it's more likely than not that there is some kind of action, but in a sense, it is a little ironic for Tommy Vitor to say that.
Yeah. Ben Rhodes will be in next to check in with.
The Kurds have something to say about the red line.
Oh, yes.
Syria.
Oh, yes, they do. Brett Barrett will be watching tonight. I know Trey Yanks will probably be updating you, or Lucas, or one of your fine military guys over in the region. Brett Barrett, host of Fox News, Special Report, America's Anchorman. Thank you, Brett. I'll be right back. America Lilacs is next. More on Minnesota when we return to the Hugh Hewitt Show. I asked our friend James Lilacs to come early and stay late today. You can read James at jameslilacs.substack.com because James has been, and probably always will be a resident of Minneapolis. And James, just for your benefit, I've just discussed with Brett Baer the Alex Preddy death and the Renee Good death. And in between, I was on his program, and I said, Minnesota's an open carry and a concealed carry state and a shell issue state, and somebody was going to get hurt after Renee Good, and now someone's dead. You live there. You can see what we don't see and feel what we don't feel. Is the city boiling over? It is on the edge of revolution, or is everyone kind of now just saying shocked and disgusted with themselves and everybody?
It's neither. It's both. I mean, where I live, it's okay. It's great. I mean, I'm about 20 blocks south of where the George Floyd stuff happened in the summertime. Unlike the governor's wife, I did not open my window so I could smell the burning tires and think of it as the perfume of justice. But we had calamities around here. We had disorder. That was 2020. This is much different. The only thing that's actually penetrated my neighborhood, as I may have mentioned a couple of weeks ago, was a woman who was driving behind a black SUV, and she was convinced it was ICE, and she was blowing whistles and gesturing and trying to get everybody to run after it and do I don't know what, but it possibly was a guy with a lawn service, or a tree trimming operation who had mistakenly been entered into the databases. So around here, no, it's quiet. But of course, you talk to your friends, you talk to your neighbors. Everybody sort of tries to feel the other person out. There's a general assumption that you're anti-ICE. This is horrible. This is awful. They ought to leave these people be. And beyond that, the conversation doesn't go any further. Now,
you had the old colleague. You had the old colleague from the Star Tribune last week who wrote they almost left the Mall of Michigan after there was another shooting, the one of the Tren de Diaro. Did he write anything after the most recent shooting?
I haven't actually read it yet or looked. But what is there to say, really? One of the more unnerving things about this era that somebody put it quite nicely is we all do the Zapruder film when it comes out to all these different vantage points of the unfortunate death of that man. And we slow it down to frame by frame, but life doesn't happen that way. The best way to understand these videos, perhaps, is to watch them at twice speed because everything is flooding and everything is immediate, and it's difficult to judge. After this last shooting, it is hard for somebody who has not been supportive of going out and getting the bad guys and taking them away to say that there has to be a lowering of the temperature. But that doesn't mean that you have to stop doing what needs to be done. So the unfortunate part, again, is that there will be continuously these cells of people who follow around the ICE agents. And the way that it's been documented is how they're doing it and the coordination and the secret little signals operations that they have and the code names and the way they've got the city into grids and the possibility that they're getting in real time the driver's or the auto plates of the vehicles that tells them it's ICE. I mean, it's extraordinarily well coordinated. And it's not, a couple of wine moms who see a truck and decide to go outside and bang on a pot. It's all part of a very, very sophisticated operation with tentacles that go back to organizations that we actually are not having the country's best interests at heart. They'd love a color revolution out of this, but they're not going to get one. So the mood now, I can't say. There was a brouhaha at a local hotel last night where they went after it, but it was a different police force. It wasn't Minneapolis.
That's okay. You answered my question. That was the Maple, Ridge front,
Maple
Mountain.
Grove.
Maple Grove,
Grove.
Police force, and they just brought the tackles. The offensive line and pulling guards took down 10 demonstrators with 24 police officers, and that was the end of that because obviously somebody knows at the Maple Grove Hotel knows the mayor.
They were banging on the side of the thing with shovels, which is a very Minnesota thing to do. I actually had to smile before I was completely disgusted by it. It really is. It's like, why don't you just pelt lutefisk at the windows and have that stuff slimy drip down? Yeah, they weren't playing in the sense the Minneapolis cops stand back because it's not a sanctuary city, and that's great. That's great. They also deployed an LRAD system, I believe it's called, which is one of those things that makes you feel uncomfortable. Probably like a Timu or a Play School version of the one that was used in Venezuela. But that's a different set of tactics. So if they're starting to push back against letting these people just absolutely try to control the situation, great. That would be good. But they're not getting that from the mayor. What the mayor is saying, of course, is that he met with Homan and that they have to end the surge as quickly as possible because it's the tactics that are sowing division. Now, I don't know if you heard specifically what the mayor said. Did you?
No.
Okay. What he said was, we have to end metro surge as quickly as possible. This is his tweet. Public safety works best when it's built on community trust, not tactics that create fear or division. Well, it's a platitude and it's twaddle, but in one sense, public safety requires a certain amount of fear in the miscreants that they're going to be apprehended. But the idea that community and trust and the rest of it will somehow result in the easy acquisition of really bad hombres out there is nonsense. He's mad that they're going in and that it's paramilitary and they look scary and they have their faces up and all the rest of it. But the fact of the matter is this was being done under the Obama administration. Nobody would have blinked once.
Where did Jacob Fry go to college? Because I'm wondering what happened to the Pete Buttigieg, Jacob Fry, Pod Brothers generation that they can't answer a question with anything resembling a specificity and resolve. I mean, just say no. We're not going to work with them, or yes, we will do the detainers, and then explain why. That was pablum what you read to me.
Yeah, well, it's a generation that just speaks in stuff that it sounds like it's been run through HR for the appropriate amount of platitudes. But he said he also made it clear that Minneapolis does not and will not enforce federal immigration laws, and that we will remain focused on keeping our neighbors and streets safe. So he believes this is part and parcel, that not enforcing federal immigration laws is part and parcel of keeping neighborhoods safe, despite the fact that they're rolling up some people who ought not to be here and do very bad things. So it's gas. It's just all gaseous nonsense.
Okay, he went to William and Mary. He was a lawyer at Villanova. I knew that. He learned his law school at Villanova. I think he is 44 years old. So he really is in the demo of perplexed.
Yeah.
They are perpetually perplexed by everything. The Iranians perplexed them, so they sent them bags of gold and the JCPOA.
Pallets of cash, yeah.
What in the world is wrong with that generation? They should not be allowed to run anything. Is he running for governor?
No, not that I know of, and he wouldn't win. Part of the problem is this difficulty in grappling with human nature, the sort of belief that there actually are, deviations within populations, that there are hierarchies of intelligences and cultures and the rest of it, and that everybody is actually pretty much cut from the same cloth. And if you just drop them here in Minneapolis, then they're going to become productive citizens and some magic will happen and it's all great. So attacking the very idea of singling out somebody because they did not come through the legal channels strikes them as an untenable intellectual position. It's not what a good person thinks. A good person believes that borders are a construct, that letting anybody in whatsoever is perfectly fine, and that once in, everybody should have opportunities that are equal to everybody else when it comes to the public funding, when it comes
to like a game of tag in the third grade.
Public schools.
Alex, don't go anywhere. During the break, you might want to look up, because I'm going to ask you, what's the difference in demographics between Maple Grove, which took on the mob, effectively, and Minneapolis, which didn't. Lilacs is my guest, as in jameslilacs.substack.com. Humorist extraordinaire, but also very perceptive social commentator when he feels like it. James, Maple Grove wanted no part of the ICE organized demonstration, so they arrested them all, took them away. Minneapolis doesn't show up.
Right.
What's the difference in the demographics of the communities?
Well, demographics look like this. When you go north of Minneapolis, you tend to get more into African American neighborhoods. When you get beyond that, you get the first ring of the suburbs, the old post-war suburbs, which have been going through changes over the years. They once were exclusively white. They are not anymore. It's changing in interesting ways. Brooklyn Center, which is up there, is I think something like the most diverse city in the state. It's like 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%. And then Brooklyn Park next to that is a little less so. By the time you get to Maple Grove, it's about 80% white. The farther you move out of the city and you get to the exurbs, it's mostly white. And relatively more conservative, but by a Minnesota model. I mean, Minnesota conservatives are pretty darn purple. To the south of me, you have it almost repeated a little bit. The suburb to the south of me, Richfield, is increasingly Hispanic in the last few years as they build and as they move in and they buy homes and start families and all the rest of it, the American dream. And I actually haven't heard an awful lot of action that's gone on down in Richfield. I'm in that neighborhood every day practically, and there's no disorder, there's no tweeting whistles. There's no, APCs going through the streets, so I can't say. But that's what it is. You go farther north you get, the more diverse you get until it starts to change, and then it becomes white in the exurbs and white as the general state is.
Now,
with a lot of exceptions.
You and I both know, because you've co-hosted with me when I've gone to the Minnesota State Fair. Everybody goes to the fair, right? Everybody goes to the fair.
Yep.
Are the people in the watch ICE, attack ICE, disrupt ICE groups ever going to visit the Butter Princess room? Are they going to go to the fair?
Absolutely.
Or are they from out of town?
I guarantee it. The people who live here, who are showing up at the protests, who are on the little signal chats, who are blowing the whistles and doing the rest of it, absolutely, I would expect to see them show up at the fair, because the fair is one of the strange things that binds us all together, and it's regardless of your political disposition. People go there because it's Minnesota, and a lot of the people who are doing these things and showing up in the street corners and protesting and the rest of it love Minnesota. They're doing it out of what they believe to be an altruistic sense. So yes. The people who are coming from elsewhere have no interest whatsoever in anything Minnesotan or the fair or the lakes or the loons. They're here to bring about the social change that they think is absolutely necessary. But of course,
some
yes,
events
if you're
do change culture. Woodstock, Kent State. Yeah. George Floyd did not change the culture of Minnesota. It made it more blue. Is this event going to make it more blue or less blue?
Well, again, do you want me to go on Vibe from Twitter, or do you want me to go from my own experience here? Vibe from Twitter is a lot of people saying, I was on the fence about a lot of this stuff, but having seen what I've seen, I'm absolutely going to vote for every single socialist program that comes down the pike, and I don't believe that. Would it mean that Minneapolis turns more blue and gets more pushed to the left? I'm not sure that's possible, actually, because right now the Democratic Socialists in the government and people who are generally blue as can be. I don't know how they're going to get any bluer unless they replace their blood with windshield wiper fluid. So it's not going to change the composition of Minneapolis. What it enforces, unfortunately, is the perception of Minneapolis, which has gotten so bad and really isn't accurate. It really isn't. But, we've sort of deserved the number of holes that we have in our feet from gunfire. So it'll take a long time for the city to come back.
After the Cuyahoga River caught on fire, for the rest of my life, I've heard about the Cuyahoga River catching on fire. And there are events and weeks and events that and then Dime Beer Night at the stadium when there was a mob that almost killed David Clyde. Cleveland had a very bad rap for a long. Is Minnesota treading on those territories?
Absolutely.
Becoming a no-go zone for the rest of the country?
Yeah, and it's worse because social media has amplified it, and because it becomes the thing that you say, I wouldn't go to Minneapolis if you paid me. It's a hellhole. It's Mogadishu, and the rest of it is like, I look at that and I just think, okay, fine. You're scared. There are people in South Dakota, rural South Dakota, who are scared to go to Sioux Falls for whatever reason. Stay where you are. But the idea that it's an unsafe place to be, based on what you've seen, isn't true. It's a big city, and I love it here. And the only reason that I'm leaving for different reasons, but I'm not moving away very far. I'm moving like 10 blocks from the city border. So if it's engulfed in complete social chaos, it'll come to my place too.
James is going to stick around because
it's a beautiful.
He's going to play a round of What Did President Trump Mean with Me when we come back. It's a fun game, and it takes someone with Lilacs agility to play it. So stay tuned for What Did President Trump Mean with Lilacs next on The Hugh Hewitt Show. James Lilacs is doing triple duty with me today. Lilacs, as in jameslilacs.substack.com, is up in Minnesota cold because Dwayne dumped a bunch of the president's presser in Iowa or walkabout in Iowa on me. I need you to help me translate. Cut number 21, James. This is President Trump.
By the way, this is ABC fake news, this one. She hasn't asked me a good question in years. I think a nice woman, but I don't really like her too much. Go ahead. What'd you say? I'd say ABC's about as bad as they get.
Would you like to see the dollar's value?
All right, so stop. James, what's the president doing there?
I believe that he's asserting that he does not believe the primacy, legitimacy, and the unassailable quality of the mainstream media. And frankly, I'm shocked that somebody would say that in 2026, especially President Trump. It's what he's always said.
Back to the Machine Shed restaurant gaggle in Des Moines, cut 22.
So I'm going around, and I'm going around because hopefully we win the midterms, and it's very scary because it's 2 out of 50 years or something like that.
That's right.
For some reason, when a president wins, Republican or Democrat, even if they're a good president, and hopefully I'm a great president, based on the first year I'm a great president. And we had a great first term, too. People don't really, we rebuilt our military. We had phenomenal financial numbers, but I think this term's blowing away really every term. But traditionally, when a president gets elected, out of, I think, 50 years, they've had 2 that won. I don't understand it.
You're going to be the next.
They've had 2, so we have to, and one was by unusual circumstance. So there's something psychological. If you win the president, whether you're Republican or Democrat, with that being said, the polls look very good. Everything looks very good. And you have great congressmen here, congressmen and women here, and we love Iowa.
All right, James, commentary.
Well, what he's saying is if we get shellacked in the midterms, it's this historical inevitability because 48 out of the last 50 times, that's exactly what's happened. It's like the tide comes in and the tide goes out. The people do this and the people do that. But if it doesn't happen, then it's great because it shouldn't happen because I was good and I did this thing right and it shouldn't happen. But if it does, it's history. I mean, it's just
that's exactly right.
It. I mean,
see, he's very easy to understand. I'm defying the law that he's difficult to understand. Cut number 23 at the Machine Shed gaggle.
Plans, Mr. President. What are your plans for Cuba, Mr. President?
Well, we're going to see what happens with Cuba. I don't know. Anybody interested in Cuba in this room? Not too many people. This is not a Cuba room, but that's all right. There are plenty of them around, especially in Miami. And Cuba will be failing pretty soon. Cuba is really a nation that's very close to failing. You know, they got their money from Venezuela. They got the oil from Venezuela. They're not getting that anymore.
Okay, James, this is not a Cuba room.
Yeah, well, you know, Iowa probably is not a Cuba room. But I mean, what he's reminding us is that Cuba is next on the agenda, is that we've gone from Venezuela to Greenland to Cuba. And I've heard this a little bit. And it's interesting because when you say Cuba is next, it makes people think, wait a minute, did what happened with Venezuela? And it's that sort of kinetic flow that just keeps you off balance and looking forward as opposed to looking back at the other things, which were solved. It was great, best time ever. So, I mean, when somebody mentions it, he's just reminding us it's on the platter, and it's on the platter in unspecified ways. You'll have to
James, you agree with me that if Xi Jinping does the very unwise thing and tries to attack Taiwan, Cuba's number comes up immediately and the 101st goes there?
I hadn't really thought of that before. I really hadn't, but it's entirely possible. It's not outside the realm of possibility. Do we want to do that? Do we need to do that necessarily? Is what's happening in China right now and all the reshuffling and the little internal dynamics indicative?
Well, reshuffling is a very kind word. That's a very gentle word for little reshuffling going on in Joe Stalin's gulag.
Yeah, that's right. Poor. So, right.
The organization chart's different now.
Ted Bundy was reshuffled this morning in a chair. Right. I mean, if that means that he's getting ready to do something or that he's dealing with the recalcitrant generals who don't want to, we don't know. We'll see. The opacity of China and its ruling red families is a mystery to me, and I wish I knew better about it. But That's interesting. He's just reminding you that to keep your eyes focused, and I mean, if he could effect the change in government in Cuba in such a way that it'd be redounded to the benefit of the people, that would be a good thing, as it was in Venezuela. But
The real estate
we gotta
developer
wait
in
for
him
to
wants
see.
all that land. Okay, let me go to 24 last. Donald Trump cut from today, cut 24.
Remember, we secured the border. Crime is down all over the country. We just had a crime report coming out from, I think, one of the networks, which they hate to hear this, but crime is the lowest number ever recorded. So, when they say, and we talk about Minnesota, but in Minnesota, you probably read, their crime is way down. You know why? Because we took out thousands of criminals out of Minnesota, and that's why it's good. So anyway, but we have Tom Homan is over there. We all love Tom.
Yeah.
And he met with the governor, met with the mayor. He's going to meet with the mayor, I guess, and it's going very well. But remember this: even Minnesota, their crime is down. And you know what?
In Minnesota, James, your crime is down. Did you know that?
Yeah, even in Minnesota. And again, that's the rep that we have. It's like saying even in Detroit, crime is down. I mean, oh my God. Well, first of all, I mean, this is standard politics. This is what presidents do. I'm tough on crime. Crime is down. Therefore, my policies work. You can attribute a lot of it to the border being closed. You can attribute a lot of it to that. You can then turn around and say, well, wait a minute. We thought that crime was low because the cities weren't reporting it. And that's a possibility there. You can say that the people who were removed from Minnesota were not out there actually doing an awful lot of crime themselves, that they may have had bad things they did, but they weren't every day engaging in rampant criminality. But, exactly what you expect politicians to say. He's saying, I was tough on crime. Crime is down. Draw the conclusions and vote.
But is crime down in Minnesota? Again, the Cuyahoga River on fire thing sticks with people from Ohio. And Minnesota is getting branded as we speak. Is crime down there?
Mm-hmm. Well, if it may be for the time, it's simply because it's too cold to actually do a lot of criming. I mean, it's been about 14 below and such, and so your miscreant tends to stay home. The criminality will probably surge in the spring, in the summer, in the warm, in the clement times. But the sense of disorder, crime-wise, seems to have abated a bit, a lot since 2020. So, and again, how much
criming with the mosquitoes that you've got is also, and you can't go to the fair. There's no criming at the fair either, as I recall.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is, unfortunately. That's the tragedy of it, but that's another show.
People stealing the chocolate chip buckets? I don't know. JamesLilix.substack.com. JamesLilix.substack.com. Donald Trump keeps talking about Iran. Here's what he said to Sid Rosenberg earlier today, cut number 2.
We have a big armada going over there right now, and hopefully we won't have to use it, but it's very powerful and bigger than what we have in Venezuela that we sent over. That worked out so well, and the leadership there is doing a very good job coordinating with us and everything else. But we have a big armada going over there, and we'll see. Hopefully we won't have to use it.
I don't think he means that, but we'll see. I'll talk to Richard Goldberg about our options and the whole strategic picture at Iran. Let me remind you, one of my sponsors is andrewandtodd.com. The 10-year Treasury went up a tick today. That means that mortgages are still above 6%. If you want to buy a house, you're going to have to just bite the bullet and get a 6% mortgage. And you know what? Andrew and Todd will call you when it's time to refi. And if you need to consolidate debt, because you got a car payment, student loan payment, credit card, maybe you got an IOU out to someone, maybe you borrowed some money to start a business and it's due, and you've got promissory notes out there, and you got to use your best bank as your house. And Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian are with Union Home Mortgage. They're bankers. They underwrite the loan. They'll refinance your house. They'll get you a second on your house. They'll get you a line of credit on your house. Or if you're a senior citizen, 62 years and older, and you're in your primary residence, you can get a reverse mortgage, get money out of your house, never make another mortgage payment again. That's a complicated transaction, but they get it done every day. They're the experts at that. If you're a veteran and you don't want to put any money down, andrewandtodd.com. 888-888-1172. I've known Andrew for 25 plus years. Were I not in a dentist chair tomorrow morning, I'd be in a Bible study with Andrew, but I will be in a dentist chair tomorrow morning. Don't forget andrewandtodd.com. I've known Todd Avakian half as long. Great men, absolute fabulous guys, and they've served thousands of you, as well as Dwayne, me, my family, lots of people in Salem. 888-888-1172, 888-888-1172, or go to andrewandtodd.com. Don't forget I'm in the Relief Factor studio the Relief Factor Studio West. I'm not snowed in. I don't know if the Relief Factor Studio North is working, and I don't know if I could have even gotten to the Relief Factor Studio Beltway if I wanted to. I'm glad I'm out west for a couple more weeks. But here's what I want to tell you. Relief Factor works in the snow, and it works in the sunshine. Relief Factor works in the rain, and it works in the dry heat. You might be the dry heat people in Phoenix that we've been hearing about forever on KKNT. Yes, I mean you, Phoenix. And all my friends in Scottsdale. And I'm here to tell you, Relief Factor, Icarian curcumin and Veritron Omega, I take it in the first hour of every program because I get my miles in every week. I don't think I'll make quite 100 this January, but I'll be close. I'll be on track for my 1,000 miles this year. And pretty good for January, and wasn't as good as last year. I wasn't as good as last year. And I feel great because Relief Factor works. Call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. 1-800-4-RELIEF. The starter kit's $19.95. Or find the starter kit as well. It's less than $1 a day at relieffactor.com. Relieffactor.com. As I promised all day, Richard Goldberg joins us. He is with the Senior Director at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. And he was in the Trump first term at the National Security Council with the Iran portfolio. In the Trump second term, he helped stand up the National Energy Dominance Council with Secretaries Burgum and Wright, who you've heard here a lot. They went back to the FDD to study Iran, and boy, what a timely time it is. Richard, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Great to have you.
Great to be here. Thank you so much.
So, Richard, since President Trump appeared on the program, 2 weeks and 2 days ago, and said he's going to hit Iran harder than he's ever been hit before, they have ever been hit before if they keep killing people. I've had on Mark Dubovitz, your colleague. I've had on Michael Duran from Hudson. I've had on Ben Talablu, your colleague. I will have on Kareem Sajapur, I think Thursday. Aviv Rettig-Gur from Israel, you. I'm doing my best to get people ready for what will be a very big kinetic collision if it happens. Do you think it's going to happen with Iran?
I do think something is going to happen. I think the president is a president of determination, commitment. I think he likely has his mind already set on some sort of outcome here and has asked his senior advisors to make sure his options are set and the force posture matches the options that are most aligned with what he wants to achieve. And I think he knows that as more and more of this information comes out, the intelligence that gets leaked, as some of the internet peaks back on in Iran, as phone calls are being made, as pictures and videos come out, he and the rest of the world sees that a red line that he drew was obliterated by this regime. He is aware of that. The promises of no executions apparently have continued in secret as well. And when you start seeing a death toll in the tens upon tens of thousands, with more still in secret locations being held, with more executions potentially on the way, that alone, of course, obliterates the red line. But he also sees a regime that's teetering. He sees historic opportunity. And as he told you, he's already in many ways sealed his fate in history as somebody like Ronald Reagan who changes the world, whether it's last June with the B-2 bombers, Operation Midnight Hammer, whether it's the most recent operation against Maduro, the Abraham Accords before that. But you know what? Ronald Reagan brought down the Soviet Union, a major threat to the United States, transformed the entire world scene. This president could still bring down one of those major threats that is world-changing, world history-changing, if he contributes to the collapse of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
And in so doing, if that happens, having cut off the People's Republic of China from Venezuelan oil, he may succeed in cutting off Iran from sending hot oil to China. They'll have to buy their oil on the world market. It's not that they won't get oil, it's just that they will pay a lot more for it, Richard. Does that not serve our strategic interests as well?
100%. I mean, I think if you, for some reason, don't care at all about 35,000 people being mass murdered in 48 hours and executions going on, you just say, not our issue, not our national interest. And for some reason, you didn't even care about the fact that Iran, as the leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world, continues to plot war against the United States, has tried to assassinate the president of the United States while he was out of office, will most certainly try to assassinate him again if they remain in power after he leaves office, and all of the other bad things they do to tie us down in the region. All the Gold Star families around the country who have grieving, have lost loved ones, whether in Iraq, Beirut, Khobar Towers over many years, in Israel, Gaza, all these different places because of the Islamic Republic of Iran. If for some reason you didn't see that as a major national security threat to us, but you subscribe to great power competition, you say it's all about China, that's our greatest existential threat of the century, then let me tell you about why the president is executing the most brilliant grand strategy in history right now for the United States and taking apart the axis of enablers for the top axis of aggressors against the United States. As China starts seeing all of its chess pieces falling off the board, as Russia starts seeing its chess pieces falling off the board, started with Assad collapsing in Syria, and then Iran being able to do nothing as the president obliterates its nuclear program, Maduro being taken out in the middle of the night in 15 minutes by Delta Force. China is seeing all of its Belt and Road initiatives, all of its investments, all of its key supply lines being threatened potentially. All the aggressors that are these middle powers that can threaten the United States and distract us potentially being taken off the game board. And remember, for China, heavily dependent on energy imports, one of their key weaknesses, 50% of their energy imports come through the Strait of Hormuz. That's obviously Saudi and the rest of the Gulf, plus Iran. But if Iran is no longer a threat there, if you're able to constrain that oil supply, and you've taken off the ability for Maduro to supply a few 100,000 barrels per day going up from Venezuela as well, they are left with the potential of having to rely on, guess who? The United States of America, from whom they could be buying more oil, and other partners where we would have strong relations, and obviously the U.S. Navy, the ability to interdict in time of conflict. That's bad grand strategy for China. That's very good grand strategy for us.
So, Richard Goldberg, I believe that if the president fails to strike at Iran, it will dent the deterrence that he has so masterfully rebuilt in the first year following the disastrous years of the locust under Joe Biden. However, I also don't believe that's going to happen. I think what he was doing with me, and then he followed with Sean Hannity, and he followed with Tony DeCopel, and he did it on True Social, was trying to prevent violence. It did not work. Ever since then, since the massacre, and you used the term 35,000, I've seen now today as high as 40,000. That's almost unimaginable, but the president is a visual person. Do you think he has a good flow of information from inside Iran as to exactly how widespread the massacre was?
I think that picture is increasing and the flow of information is obviously accelerating. I do actually think that it's possible he did not have a good flow of information that first weekend when the massacres were taking place. Most mainstream media were downplaying the reports that I and others were hearing from inside of Iran. The leading opposition news source, Iran International, was reporting throughout the weekend 5,000 and 12,000. We were hearing a lot of the stories that are now being confirmed through the weekend, but you would hear from a lot of sources in government that's just not matching what we're hearing so far, both here in the United States, in Great Britain, and elsewhere, where we would rely on the intelligence community to validate rumors coming out of Iran. There's no way to deny what's happening now. Millions of people came out in the streets. There was mass murder. The blood is still stained across Tehran and other major cities. People are still trying to identify their loved ones who are being held hostage even as dead bodies throughout Iran right now. The fear of a continued crackdown if anybody else comes out into the streets, but also understanding that this is a regime that teeters. Why did people come out into the streets? There was an economic crisis that Donald Trump helped facilitate and accelerate. There has been the snapback of UN sanctions, and so there's an understanding in the market that the old Iran nuclear deal is never coming back. Banks were teetering on the edge of collapse. One did collapse. There's a water crisis because of the mismanagement of this maniacal, corrupt regime. There is a power energy crisis where the grid is experiencing blackouts throughout Iran. So people hate this regime. They already hate them for what they do to the people repression-wise, as you can see. They hate them because their standard of living continues to go down into the gutter. This has spread from upper class to middle class to lower class, religious, secular, all across Iran. And if millions of people were willing to take to the streets, but right now are deterred by machine guns and IRGC forces out there, if those IRGC forces somehow are dispersed, have to run away themselves, stands to reason millions of people would come back into the streets if they see help on the way, as the president promised. And frankly, we long term, whether or not this collapses tomorrow, remember 1978 to 1979 took a year before the Shah had to flee Iran. Even if this is a long-term situation and this regime does not immediately collapse, or the supreme leader is taken out and you don't have a full change in regime, the RGC steps in, a different successor from the mullah step in. If you're able to use this opportunity to continue to degrade and dismantle a direct threat to the United States, a direct tool of the CCP in China and Putin in Moscow, by degrading their missile program, their Navy, their drone program, and their command and control, you do a great service to the United States. You enforce a red line and show the enemies of America this president continues to mean business. And maybe, yes, you give the opportunity for millions of Iranians to come back out and take this country back for Iran, which will be a game changer for U.S. national security.
Don't go anywhere. I'm coming right back with Richard Goldberg, Senior Director at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, FDD.org, and you can follow him at Richard Goldberg on X. I'll make sure I get the right. Is there a middle initial in there, Richard, or is it just Richard Goldberg?
Just at Rich_Goldberg. The underscore catches people sometimes.
At Rich_Goldberg. He's one of the people I tell you should follow routinely online, because there are a whole bunch of people with opinions about Iran, but there aren't that many with actual firsthand knowledge of having worked the portfolio at the NSC. Richard has. Richard Goldberg, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. For years, and Trump won, had the portfolio over Iran sanctions, trying to rebuild some kind of pressure on Iran after Team Obama gave the world away to them, including pallets of cash. He came back in term 2 at the beginning of it to stand up the Energy Dominance Council and to try and repair the damage done by 4 years of Biden appeasement. Hypothetical entirely, Richard, before we go back to the reality of strike list and priorities. Had Barack Obama not gone belly up on Iran in his first term and then pursued the JCPOA in his second term, would this regime have already fallen? Did Obama save it?
Oh, he saved it several times. I mean, 2009, the last time we remember, the first time we remember a mass uprising starting in Iran after what people understood to be a stolen election. They don't have elections in Iran, they have selections in Iran. And you had this sort of mass uprising in Tehran suburbs taking place. It was an upper middle class revolt, and they put that down with force. And Barack Obama sent the love letters behind people's back to the supreme leader saying, I want to have a good relationship. By the way, I've seen those letters when I was working in the White House. This was unimaginable. He abandoned the people in the street because he wanted a nuclear deal, because he internalized this anti-American ideology that we were actually to blame for all of our problems with Iran. He believed in the false narrative of a coup that the CIA was behind, that the Iranian regime has put out for years. He believed that you needed to have a balance of power in the region, let Iran have a little more power, and that would offset the Saudi power and the Israeli power, and then we would have this great equilibrium, and kumbaya would happen, and we just needed to get to a nuclear deal because, hey, they have grievances, and we should understand that.
Richard, it's not very relevant, but I want you follow. Has anything been heard from the Metternich of MS Now, Ben Rhodes? Has President Obama said anything about the massacre of tens of thousands of people? Have the people who kept the Ayatollahs in power, have they had the decency to come forward and condemn the regime that they parlayed with?
No, because they're out there working the media right now to say it's over, too late, can't do anything, too dangerous to act. Don't know what would come next. Could be worse if the supreme leader were to go. That's who's behind a lot of those news stories and headlines that you see out there. It's Team Obama, Ben Rhodes out there still trying to hope for a day where they get back to appeasement as the policy with this regime. However, I will say that for many people who are, let's call them normal, more mainstream, clearly don't agree with them on a lot of policy issues, but they went along with that because they're Democrats. They believe this is what we have to do. This is Barack Obama's foreign policy, so I'll get on the train. They are looking at, you say 40,000. They're seeing at the numbers right now. They're seeing the pictures, the videos. Those types of people on the left and in the center cannot justify the JCPOA anymore, cannot justify an appeasement policy anymore, are looking at this idea of having a negotiation with this regime with everything going on right now, saying, are you kidding me? This regime has to end up in the ash heap of history. The sooner the better. So, yes, there are ideologues out there. And we remember some of them who served in the Biden administration, too, like Rob Malley, the special envoy for Iran, who was kicked out for being a little too close to the Iranians, perhaps, and many others. They might be rooting against the Iranian people right now. They might be trying to, in sinister ways, influence the president not to act. But I think the vast majority of Americans see what's happening here, see a red line declared, see what this regime is capable of against its own people, know that it's capable of building more and more missiles to use against us and our allies, and knows that this is a historic time to take advantage of for our national security.
So, Richard, there are lots of different definitions of what we're aiming for. Some people want regime negotiations, and if we are to believe, one of those includes Special Envoy Witkoff, but he's been involved in some head fakes of extraordinary proportions. There's regime coercion, which is what's going on in Venezuela. There's regime evolution, which is what we hope goes on long-term in Venezuela to free and fair elections and democracy return. Then there's regime punishment, and just simply a punitive strike saying, what you have done here is beyond the bounds of what the West will tolerate. That's what President Trump did in term one vis-a-vis Assad when he used chemical weapons. And then there's regime change, which involves Iraq in 2003, Afghanistan in 2001. I'm in favor of at least regime punishment. In other words, just a simple punitive strike. And we can talk about target lists. Where are you in that option, Richard Goldberg? What would you like to see happen as a strategic goal?
Yeah, I am at the very least regime punishment, but I would like to see the facilitation of regime collapse and transition. That does not mean boots on the ground. It does not mean an occupation. It does not mean the United States literally going to Tehran to do things, though. If somehow the president and General Kane and Director Ratcliffe can pull a rabbit out of the hat and there's some incredible operation like nobody imagined in Caracas that just suddenly happens, I would be impressed with that. I would not be predicting that. It would seem high risk and dangerous. But who knows? This president and this team around him have proven everybody else that we can't really expect the unexpected with their planning at the moment. However, given the normal set of facts in front of us, the parameters that we would imagine, what we would be willing to do, what this president should be willing to do, and what he should not be willing to do given the risks to U.S. Personnel, I think it is quite appropriate, A, to make sure they are punished for going across the red line, but B, take this moment, seize this moment to continue to squeeze, to degrade, to dismantle. And the weaker and weaker and weaker they get, the stronger and stronger the people get. And yes, you will see some sort of transition at some point. This regime cannot continue. If banks are collapsing because the president enforces his threat of 25% tariffs against all neighboring countries of Iran, and the cash flow stops moving from daily trade, and you actually use either by naval forces like you saw in Venezuela, or kinetic action or cyber action, some sort of prevention of the oil flowing out of Karg Island, you will force an immediate liquidity crisis. You will accelerate what is already a liquidity crisis. More banks will fail. There will be a massive inability to pay the IRGC payroll. That would be very, uncertain for what happens next to that regime alone, just internally with fracturing. If you were to take out kinetically command and control, if you were to disrupt communications, at the same time that you also.
But do we have to see it, Richard? Does the American people and the rest of the world have to see what it is that the United States does as a reaction to the massacre? Because if it doesn't, I don't know that the red line isn't erased anyway. I think they have to see it.
Well, of course they have to see it. You mean could there just be a cyber event and then you say that's right. No, there's no way. There's no way that is sufficient at this point based on what the president has promised, what he has suggested, and what, if you're Xi Jinping, if you're Vladimir Putin, and you're expecting, if you were to default now, moving a carrier strike group there, moving all these squadrons, building up a force posture, and then just saying, hey, I had a cyber event and we'll call it a day, I think that would be laughed out of the room. The president certainly knows that. And I think we should have a little bit of level setting here. It's not like Xi and Putin don't believe the president is willing to use force. He has proven it, certainly over the last year and in his first term. He has just taken a dictator out of Caracas. I think they have to know he's serious. But you stop enforcing your red lines, that can change quickly.
I'll be right back with Richard Goldberg of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. We're going to talk about risks to American personnel in the region, and then we're going to talk about target lists in our last two segments on today's Iran in Focus hours. The biggest story in the world remains Iran and whether or not the United States strikes and if Israel joins in with it. Richard Goldberg, I want to talk about target sets now. I've asked all of the experts, and I'll ask Kareem when he comes on to finish my week of experts on Iran. Why don't we hit Karg Island? Because it and the two other oil terminals are the only hard currency generators that this regime has to pay its terrorists with. Why don't we do that?
This is the number one source of revenue for the regime. If you stop the flow of oil, then you are on an egg timer for how long the regime can survive. I will add that I also think we underestimate the importance of border trade just in its very near circle of influence and neighbors. If you actually stop some of that daily trade and the currency transfers and the cash access, you will also accelerate liquidity crises inside the banking system. But yes, we have long had this option. And obviously on sanctions alone, we saw this happen in Venezuela as well. You have an immediate impact in the market. Normal actors, normal corporations, and by the way, even state-owned enterprises of China shy away from completing a transaction because they don't want to suffer the blow of a cutoff from the U.S. financial system, which is the punishment under U.S. sanctions. And so for the Chinese, at least, they resort to illicit activity. They set up these so-called teapot refineries. These are unofficial, sort of supposedly disconnected from state-owned enterprises. They have a ghost tanker fleet, just like what you saw in Venezuela. A lot of those, by the way, were the Iranian ghost tanker fleet. When you saw the U.S. seizing them, they seized them with U.S. sanctions attached from the Revolutionary Guard Corps. So you have all these ghost tankers bringing oil out of Karg Island, chugging along. We let them go all the way through the strait. We let them go all the way to China, deliver it. We know exactly who they are, where they're coming from, what cargo they got, and when they unload. And by the way, who has the offtake agreements after they hit the teapot refineries? The state-owned oil companies of China. So we have always had the ability to escalate against Beijing in a sanctions realm to get them to try to cut off the transactions. Obviously, that's complicated in a very complicated bilateral relationship, and maybe there's reasons in a trade war and other things we haven't gone that direction. There are other ways to exert that influence. The president has tried a tariff threat now. That doesn't seem to have worked so far, and we haven't enforced it yet that I've seen in the face of Chinese continuing to ignore that. He is now moving a carrier strike group. That comes with 3 destroyers. He already had 3 destroyers on station. Does he envision some sort of naval armada, a quarantine again, like what we saw in Venezuela, to start seizing the very large tankers coming out of Karg Island and not let the oil flow, start having contracts canceled, and simply de facto stop the oil transactions from taking place?
Okay, Richard, you're a student of history. We spent a lot of World War II trying to hit Hitler's capacity to produce oil and to deny him the ability to get to the oil fields in the Soviet Union. Why don't we just blow up the refineries? They can be rebuilt under a new regime.
We have that option set. The truth is that if you go back to the 12-day war, it's not like this option set wasn't on the table. And by the way, that target set was on the table for the Israelis as well during 12 days of their own airstrikes. And with the exception of a couple of fuel depots near Tehran, they avoided hitting energy infrastructure. Why is that? Why is it that we hesitate to do that? Well, in the end, if you are a military planner, if you're advising the president, you say, well, Mr. President, if we hit their energy, then they will have a proportional response, which will be to hit other energy, whether that be to mine the Strait of Hormuz and deny Saudi oil from moving out to the market, or hit Saudi oil infrastructure itself and try to create a massive catastrophic disruption event for the market. Couple of responses to that the president should know about. Number one, then give me at the top of the target list, we're going to hit the missiles, the drones, and the IRGC Navy first, and take that threat off the board. Why do we keep having to be deterred by that threat? And number two, This is a different oil market today because of Donald J. Trump. And we should understand that this is China's pressure point, not ours. 50% of China's oil imports comes through the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranians want to mine that strait. They want to attack Saudi oil. Won't be good. I'm not saying we won't have a short-term price spike because it is a global commodity, but we're not going to run out of oil here. We're going to be okay, and we'll get the strait back open fast. And I don't think there will be any government facilities left in Tehran afterwards from what the president would do in response.
Richard, thank you. I've been through a lot of experts, and they all say we got to worry about our Gulf Cooperation Council allies, and we do. And MBZ is our best ally, and MBS is a rising ally, and we got to worry about world oil markets. But Canada's coming online with a lot of heavy crude, and we got a lot of heavy crude, and Venezuela's got a lot of everything that Iran's got. I just don't understand why it's not at the top of the target list. But my last segment with Richard's coming up because we do have to discuss risk to Americans. We have a lot of assets in the region, Rich. I know that families of people who are on the Lincoln, and I've had family on the Lincoln, no, not right now, are wondering, hey, can they hit the Lincoln? Can they hit the destroyers? Can they hit our base in Qatar? We saw a demonstration attack after Midnight Hammer. We saw Israel hammered a lot, I think 30 dead. We've seen them hit al-Assad with ballistic missiles, precision strikes on al-Assad in whatever year that was, that they blew up al-Assad. I had friends and family on al-Assad at that point that got off. How much can they hurt us with their ballistic missile capacity?
They can definitely target U.S. bases in the region through their ballistic missiles. They also have cruise missile capacity as well. We saw that utilized against the Saudi oil infrastructure back in 2019, along with drones. So long as we keep our naval forces far away with our standoff capabilities, whether that be Tomahawk strikes or fighter jets off the boat, we should be outside of their striking distance to our naval forces. They do not have much of an air defense left, if any. Any that would be still there will be accounted for both by the Growlers on the aircraft carrier. Those are the electronic warfare fighter squadrons that we have, the EA-18Gs, and also the fact that the Israelis sort of took out all of the Russian air defense already, the Iranian knockoff of the Russian air defense. It's not to say you couldn't have an oopsie, but the threat is much lower from an air perspective. If there are any
you remember the
Argentinians
hit that British boat? I can't remember the name of the ship that they sunk in the Falklands.
You can't have a total prediction here. You have to. There can always be something that goes wrong. There can always be something you're like, you can't believe that happened. But by and large, you do have to be prepared for their missile threat. We have missile defenses available. We have the SM-3s on the destroyers. We have some land-based Patriots and other at our bases in the region. So yes, we would be on force protection condition, highest possible level. People in barracks underground, prepared for any sort of retaliation, already moving out most essential, critical personnel and platforms to prepare for such a contingency. But that goes back to the fact that if you have a target list and you are most afraid of that retaliatory capability, then you want to mitigate that from the start. You want to go after all the underground facilities where they store their missiles. If there is a launch, we will detect the launch immediately and take out the launchers. That's what the Israelis did very effectively during the 12-day war. If you see fast boats going around in the Gulf, there should be a shoot-on-sight order. Get rid of the boats. Don't hesitate. If you see anything that looks like mining, shoot the boats. Take out the port, take out the IRGC Navy headquarters and command and control. All of those should be on the top of a target list.
Okay, so Richard,
if you are looking to do something real.
We got 4 minutes left, so I want to ask you the toughest question. Your phone rings.
Oh boy,
it's the president. Hey, Goldberg, I heard you talking to Hewitt, and he was quoting me from 2 weeks ago. Things have changed. What do you want me to do, and do you really think my red line would be erased if I don't do anything? What do you want me to do, and would it really be a red line erased? What do you say to him?
Mr. President, everyone's watching. You gave your word. You decided that you were going to set a red line, which was totally appropriate. And that red line has been obliterated because in the end, these are crazy, maniacal radicals who have tried to kill you and will try to kill you again when you leave office. But you already know that. They've killed a lot of Americans and they will keep killing Americans. This is your moment in history. Strike them at their most lethal strategic threat to us long term, and then hit them in command and control and senior leadership to try to blind them, disorient them, and give the people a chance. I'm not saying that's going to guarantee it's going to be, the collapse of the regime overnight. I don't know what's going to come next. I can't guarantee you that. But I do know that this regime staying in power with the ability to lash out and reach the United States or our allies is very dangerous and very good for China and Russia. And you will do the world and the United States a great favor by taking action now.
So Bibi says the same thing. Do you want me to have Israel come along, or do you want them to stay home?
Oh, I think that if you have the aircraft carrier of the state of Israel at our disposal, that means we have 2 carrier strike groups at our disposal, actually. The entire Israeli Air Force and their clandestine and cyber capabilities inside of Iran. We don't know what they could be capable of doing. If I was the President of the United States, I would say, what are our unique capabilities against specific targets that the Israelis can't touch, that they can't have impact on, versus what are the Israelis able to do on their own and continue to contribute? I think it would be crazy not to coordinate this with the Israelis.
And then he finishes, Richard, this way. I like Erdogan. Erdogan called me. He doesn't want me to do this. He just put in a strike. He put in radar in Damascus. What do we do about Turkey?
Tell him that I hope he really loves what we've done to bring the Iraq-Turkey pipeline back online and the revenue that's creating for his regime and for his country, that there's a lot more business to be done. And hopefully he understands that the Islamic Republic of Iran, at war with the United States all these decades, people who have tried to kill me personally, me, the President of the United States, and have killed many, many, many Americans, really shouldn't be around much longer after what they've done here in the streets and what they continue to do to the United States and our allies. And I hope you understand that as a NATO ally, because we could have a great relationship, but I don't think you want to be with those guys, right?
All right, very last question. I don't think the red line's obliterated yet, because there's a rationale for what he did when he did and what he said when he said, and I think it was very strategic, but it will go away by a date certain. I'm saying St. Patrick's Day. How long does he have to act, Richard, before the damage, Obama-like damage to his credibility is done?
I don't like setting a timetable on that. If he is intending to act and he is continuing to move forces into position to be able to fulfill his objectives, he should use this time to squeeze, destabilize, and disorient. That can be done in the economic realm, that can be done in the cyber realm, and then follow on with the kinetic action. So long as that's all sequenced, it's all coming together, it's all part of a strategy. The time is on his side. He should not rush something like this. It should be done correctly.
Richard Goldberg from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Thank you. Follow Rich on X at Rich_Goldberg. At Rich_Goldberg, and visit Foundation for Defense of Democracy. That's at FDD on X as well. All of they've got the strongest Iran department inside the Beltway, because they've got people who've actually done it, including Rich Goldberg, who's been Mr. Sanctions for a long, long time. Thank you, Rich. Coming back, don't go anywhere, America. We've got a couple more experts to have on about this, but by now you should have a fairly comprehensive grip on the Iran situation if you have been listening to every hour of every Hugh Hewitt show. I will post the Richard Goldberg interview over at my YouTube channel. If you missed yesterday's interview with Ben Talablu, you want to listen to that as well. And you want to listen to the other people I've talked to. Michael Duran last week, Mark Dubowitz the week before that, Haviv Rettig-Gur a week after President Trump was on. Of course, President Trump himself, when we began the talk about whether or not he would hit Iran, and he told me, yes, if they keep killing people, or they are still killing people, the president is doing his excellent job of fogging up the picture, which he always does, keeps everyone guessing as to what and where he's going to do, what he is going to think about doing. And he says A and then not A, B and then not B, C and then maybe Z. That's how the president rolls. It's very Nixonian. It is very effective to confuse everyone, which is what you want for tactical or strategic surprise. Iranians are flying drones out over the ocean. Good luck with that. I hope they don't come back in one piece. Don't forget, I'm in the Relief Factor studio. I took it in hour 1. I remind you in hour 2, and this is hour 3. I want to tell you Relief Factor does work. Indeed, you can take a day off. I took this morning off because I was taking my friend Jim Sweet to the airport, and goodness knows if Jim is going to make it back to Philadelphia today, because he was going through Phoenix, and I know Philly got some snow dump, but he's pretty confident. He checked his airlines this morning, so I didn't go up the big hill. the Implacable Hill and didn't do the Canyon Walk with Jim like I did yesterday. So I took a day off, and tomorrow morning I'll be in the dentist chair from sunup, Crown Day. And that's always a wonderful day on which to do 6 hours of radio, but I will be doing just that because tomorrow's just one of those days. But Relief Factor will get me through it. Doesn't matter. It doesn't do anything for the after effects of lots of shots of anesthesia in the mouth. It doesn't do anything for sitting funny in a dentist chair. But it does help you recover from exercise, or it does address the lingering aches and pains that come when you are a snow shoveler for the first time in 3 years, as has happened throughout the South. Or you're one of the ice-capades people who went out on the ice that is frozen over all throughout the South and fallen, and you're bruised and limping around. Relief Factor will help you. More importantly, as you get older, you need the 4 nutritious natural supplements provided: Icarian, curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. Get the starter pack and try it for yourself for 3 weeks, $19.95. That's less than $1 a day. You call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800-4RELIEF, or go to their website and find the starter pack there, relieffactor.com. I remind you, over at Fox News, just Google Hugh Hewitt Fox News. You'll see all my columns for many years. My Morning Glory column today is titled, Canada is a Small Power, Biting the Hand That Protects It. Subheadline, how unfortunate for our friends up north to be led by a banker who thinks he can reorder the world. It's a fairly long column. I mean, they let me have a lot of rope to run with because Mark Carney's 15 minutes deserves at least a 10-minute read in response. It was a real rookie mistake, and he's going to have to abjectly apologize to the United States, I think, because it will offend everyone to be compared unfavorably with the Chinese communist genocidal maniacs. And that's what Mark Carney did. That's over at Fox News. Hugh Hewitt, Google it. And then come back after you visit my website, HughHewitt.com, Dwayne's World, Dwayne's Podcast, Highly Concentrated Hugh, my X account, and, of course, my YouTube account. Thank you for listening.